Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar hosted by Toradex in joint partnership with QNX. The topic of today's webinar is about achieving ISO 10218 compliance in industrial robotics with Toradex and QNX, enhancing safety and performance. On the next slide, please. I am Lucas, I am the product marketing manager here at Toradex, and joining me today is Ursulan, a senior technical product manager at QNX, and also Winston, senior manager at QNX. Ursulan will do most of the presenting here today. Just before we dive into the main topic, a few organizational points. Please use the chat window of the webinar tool in case you have any technical issues. Our team is monitoring it and is ready to assist you. Also, at the end, we will have a questions and answer session. So please type your questions in the chat at any time, and we will pick them up at the end. And last, this webinar will be recorded and also will be made available for on-demand viewing at a later point. With that, let's get started with an overview on what we will cover today. On the next slide, please. So I'll start by quickly going over what we offer at Toradex and how it connects to QNX offerings. Then I'll hand over to Ursulan, who will do most of the main topic of the webinar, talking about how to simplify development and of safety critical industrial and robotic systems with QNX. On the next one, please. So at Toradex, we offer solutions for the whole stack of your embedded product, starting from our ARM-based systems on module, which greatly reduces the effort of doing your own like system on chip downboard, and also lowers your total cost of ownership by basically letting us handle the design, manufacture, and maintenance of the hardware, and allows you to focus just on your end application instead of focusing on like integration work and all of that. Moving up the stack, we also offer off-the-shelf development carrier boards meant for evaluating and prototyping, as well as off-the-shelf production carrier boards meant for high volume deployment, which effectively transforms our systems on module on a single board computer offering. Again, going one level up, our custom solutions division is able to deliver end-to-end product development services, which includes customized carrier boards, display integration, handling enclosures, certifications, all of that. And finally, on the last layer, on the software layer, we have our integrated Linux offering, which includes development tooling and cloud services, all to help you develop and maintain your production fleet securely. But also more importantly here, we are also tightly integrated with our partner ecosystem, including QNX, for additional offerings on the software stack layer, which is where most of the presentation here will be. Please, Ursulan, on the next one, we have our portfolio of SOMs. So as of today, we have 5 families. Members of same families are pin-to-pin compatible for easy scalability. So for example, you can seamlessly scale from a lower performing module, like a Verdin AM62, to a higher performing module of the same family, like a Verdin AMX95. Our highest performing family today is the Acula family, offering the Acula IMX95 and the Acula AM69. And the Acula family offers great performance and reliability, targeting mostly robotics, industrial, and medical applications as well. If you jump on the next one, please, we highlight exactly what's the support that we offer in partnership with QNX. And in just a few words, the QNX BSP is supported first on our Apalis IMX6 module, on our IMX8 modules across our families, also on IMX95 modules across our families. This is under development. Also interesting to highlight here, specifically the IMX95 that's present on our Verdin and Acula families, which offers, for example, functional safety features at hardware level. This synergy, next slide please, of reliable and high quality hardware together with QNX's real-time OS that's made for fault tolerance and high reliability, delivers secure, low latency solutions that's ideal for industrial, like you see there, our target industrials, medical, industrial robotics, automotive, and other mission-critical applications. With that, I hand over to Ursula, who will tell you a little bit more about how QNX simplifies development of safety-critical systems.
Perfect. Thank you, Lucas. As mentioned, my name is Ursula Khan. I'm a Senior Technical Product Manager at QNX. I mainly am responsible for the BSP and the hardware roadmap. Today, we're going to be diving into simplifying development of safety-critical industrial and robotic systems and how the ISO 10218 standard can help people come up with better functional safety designs for their final applications and solutions. So before we get started, we're just going to throw a quick poll up for the audience on the screen here to get a sense of what applications you guys might be building and what for. So we'll just leave this up for a little while. It's just always good to get an idea of if the people attending the webinar are working in security, industrial, medical, automotive, or something else entirely. Okay, wonderful. So it seems that the vast majority of people attending are in industrial and then another large group in medical, which aligns with expectations here. Perfect. Okay, perfect. So I think we should be at the first page here. So we'll begin the conversation and we'll center today's discussion and webinar by first taking a look at the safety systems of today. The large majority of robotics application in industrial settings exist as part of structured environments where there is clear separation of zones and safeties for both humans and robots to operate in. This is a relatively simple method trying to keep everyone safe while the robot is operating. And normally there are redundant safety mechanisms that keep harm from happening to humans while they're working. On the left over here, we have an image of a potential structured environment where we have a robot arm lifting things off a conveyor belt and a human might be communicating with this robot arm. There's a cage that clearly separates where the human is going to be operating and where the robot is going to be operating. In systems like this, often if a door to the gate is opened, that will be some sort of safety mechanism which will shut off operation of the robot, or there are emergency stop switches that are in place to make sure that safety is adhered to. So all this to say, right now, the safety goal of today is simply to keep two worlds separate, robots in their range of operation and humans in theirs. The thing is, as we move forward with technological advances, as these robot arms become more capable and more able to do multiple different tasks, we aren't going to be able to keep the best structured environments, and we're going to be moving into more unstructured environments. Now, unstructured environments would be very similar to what we were looking at before, but now you can remove the cage that the robot arm was operating within. Now the robot arm might have freedom of movement and be interacting with multiple touch points instead of just the one conveyor belt. By doing that, we are going to increase the cohabitance of robot arms with humans. There's not going to be this caged off area that humans can stay out of to make sure that they're safe from robots. This increases the need of robots to be able to have advanced sensing capabilities, hardware that's able to hook into that, and software that's able to act and make decisions based on sensor inputs. Now, again, if we're taking an example like that robot arm, in the past, there might have just been a kill switch, or if the gate is open, the robot stops operating. Now, if you remove that cage and people might be walking in and around that robot, perhaps we have cameras that use computer vision to figure out where humans are, and if it's within a vicinity, the operation is slowed or stopped. Maybe we have different radar sensors that are used. So in that sense, we're going to be getting more of a demand in our safety systems to respond to multiple new inputs, increasing the amount of variability that can happen within the environment, thus increasing our need to have a more sophisticated and complex safety case that understands the risks we're putting people in when they're working alongside these robots. So functional safety and why it matters in robotics, it was touched a little bit in the last two slides, but it really just comes down to there's a prevalence of automation within industry, right? As technologies advance, as companies are able to use robots more effectively and more efficiently, they want to realize those gains, right? Robots are going to start performing more and more critical tasks, and failure of safety mechanisms in these robots can have severe implications if we're not addressing them with the correct solution mindset when we're building up our applications. Because of this prevalence in automation, we're again increasing the human exposure. If you look at a warehouse that might have had one or two robot arms, all caged off, maybe there's just one or two trained personnel that actually have to know how to interact and be around the robot, what the robot's behavior patterns are, and so on and so forth, meaning that these trained individuals are easily able to predict and adapt to how the robot is operating in its fixed environment. As we make it unstructured, maybe not everybody has the exact proficiency of training needed to be in and around these robots, right? Potentially somebody might be visiting the warehouse and doesn't know exactly the path the arm's going to take, what it's going to do, how it's going to react to. This puts a bigger burden on the people developing robots and the people developing these solutions to come up with the means and methods to make sure that people are safe and operation is done properly. Now, the biggest challenge to all of this is that we're really increasing the complexity and the risk profile as we go into more sophisticated systems, as we intertwine the human realm and the robotic realm. There's so much more risk that we have, and what we want to be doing is thinking in a functional safety mindset where we're trying to figure out what are the best ways that we can mitigate a lot of these risks, identifying them, figuring out corrective actions, fault handling, all of these things. And they're really enabled, again, by advanced sensing, by AI, computer vision, and we need to integrate all of these technologies to make sure that we're really addressing the demand robust safety mechanisms. So when we're talking again about functional safety, there's a bunch of different ISO standards that have been published that help us in making sure that our solution is really taking functional safety at its core. There are three levels of standards, level A, B, and C, and as you move down the pyramid, it gets more and more specific to each industry. Type A standards, here the IEC 61508 for functional safety. This is a general purpose and high level standard which applies widely to a bunch of industries. This provides a framework for how you should develop a safe system. It tells you about the procedures you need to follow, the documentation that's needed, but what it won't do for you is give you a step-by-step guide on how to design your system. Now, as we move down to ISO 13849, safety control systems and the safety of machinery, we start hitting industry-specific standards. These are going to be much more direct and guiding about what's needed. They're going to give you information on system architecture, reliability limits, and implementing diagnostics. They're really great for industries like manufacturing, where machines need to meet very, very specific safety requirements. Now, Type C, which is ISO 10218, the topic of today's discussion. These documents really have industrial robots in mind, and it provides detailed guidance on how to ensure safety for a specific device. It's even more prescriptive than the Type Bs and dealing with this particular subject matter. Again, it's great and wonderful that we design our systems with functional safety in mind, and we follow these standards and these guidelines on actually designing a system with functional safety. But when we're looking at hardware and software coming together, it's really important to have an operating system like QNX, which is already certified across multiple safety standards. We're certified for auto, industrial, medical, rail, and this pre-certification on our OS is really going to accelerate the time to market for a lot of people instead of when dealing with OSs that are not pre-certified. So in these ISO standards and functional safety as a design, the V model is something that is fairly well known. In this presentation, I'm just going to touch slightly on the left side of this V model, which is the definition phase. It's really important to nail down the three phases, which is the functional safety concept, the technical safety requirements, and the system design, to make sure that the system you're building has functional safety at its base. And when you're doing your integration testing, you're linking all your requirements to work items, that you've done the groundwork that's needed to have a safe solution. So to start with the functional safety concept, over here, we're trying to define the what and why of our product, of our application. And what we want to achieve at this step is to establish a goal that aligns with the use cases of the system that's being built. In the concept phase, the key things that you're going to be generating is going to be a hazard analysis and risk assessment and a functional safety concept. One second. From this, so once we've developed our hazard analysis and risk assessment and functional safety concept, we move on to our technical safety requirements. Now, what we're doing in this stage is we're matching requirements to our hazard analysis and our FSC, which is our functional safety concept. And these can be both functional and non-functional requirements that are going to help us fulfill whatever goal or mission we have for this particular product or application. In safety critical systems, these requirements become very, very important because they will directly impact the design and the validation we do of the safety measures we are requiring. Requirements include things like redundancies, fail-safes, emergency stops, so on and so forth. The second portion of the technical safety requirements is to actually define the architecture that you're going to be working with. The architecture breaks down components and defines how they will interact with to meet our requirements. If we're thinking about a robot arm, this architecture is going to detail how your sensors interact with each other, the processors, the communications, how the actuators will move the robot arm itself, and how all of this comes together to ensure safe working of the robot arm. Both the requirements and the architecture are critical to make sure that you have a safe system design, which leads us into the third point on the definition scale, which is really our system design. We're turning our high-level requirements into a detailed design. Output of this phase is going to be failure modes, effect analysis, and fault tree analysis. So ISO 10218 recently got updated in February of 2025. Before this, the guidance in ISO 10218 was very sparse and didn't really include too many safety functions that we had to adhere to. This new update, as technology is moving forward and technology is advancing, is trying to address the need of having standards that align to unstructured environments. Now, again, robots are getting more and more advanced, and there is a much bigger safety need that we need to address. Now, we as individuals, when we're designing, I'm sure that a lot of people will take safety in mind. For example, when we consider an emergency stop, right? Or when a robot needs to come to a halt. I think everybody can agree that when it comes to a stop, it should come to a stop. But For example, one of the safety functions that is in the new ISO 10218 is the position holding monitoring, right? So what we're saying is the robot application has a tolerance window in which once a stop is issued, if it exceeds this movement, we are failing a safety case, right? And like this, there are a lot more safety functions that are defined in this ISO standard that are going to help us make sure that we're hitting all the checklists to make sure that our design isn't leaving anything unobserved. So again, in this, it describes your possible trigger event, which is robot application exceeds movement tolerance after drive power was removed while the robot application is stopped. So again, if I issue a stop and it just keeps moving, as you can imagine, if there are people in the area and we have a camera that is our sensor, and it sees a human walking into its path of motion and software triggers a stop, there needs to be some tolerance where that robot needs to come to a full halt. And if it exceeds that, it's a failure case. We need to make sure that that person walking does not come into harm's way anymore. Now, when we hit these failure cases, the intended result is after power is restored, the robot application does not move until there is a deliberate and manual action to reset or acknowledge. So this is just saying that when we're hitting these safety cases, or these safety failures, we will be manually making sure that things are proceeding as follows. So we've been talking about the increased safety needs and the increased demands in the robots in industrial settings. And a lot of that comes down to your OS, the programs that you write. And QNX is, again, a pre-certified OS in a lot of different industries. We have our QNX OS for safety, and we have our hypervisor for safety as well. Now, QNX is again, a fault-tolerant and a highly reliable system which has real-time determinism. This means that when we're looking at QNX as an OS, the system behavior is A, predictable, and B, repeatable. This means that tasks are executed in a predictable manner every time. And because of its hard real-time determinism, all your tasks can be guaranteed to be executed within strict deadlines. When there's a missed deadline, there means there is a system failure, and that needs to be accounted for. When we're looking at safety applications of the present and the future, one of the things that you need to be reliant on is the fact that your OS is repeatable and predictable. Now, in addition to those aspects of QNX as an OS, we have freedom from interference. So on the right side here, you can see this is a very lightweight drawing of QNX, and what we have is a microkernel. The OS operates, this microkernel takes a small subset of actions, and a lot of the bigger applications and drivers like networking, graphics, file systems are moved out of the kernel. And basically what this allows is if we have an issue with networking, the drivers will still be functional, the graphics will still be working. So none of these blocks are going to be interfering with each other. If something were to happen, they go down, they come back up, and they reach an operational state, leading to less downtime and less crashes on your end system, right? Now, the advantage of QNX with all of these things included is when you will be working in a safety context with QNX as your OS, what we do is we provide safety documentation, which will give good guides and good references to developers and companies on how to design their system with safety in mind, best coding practices, and stuff like that. Before I move on here, we'll throw another poll up. And during this presentation, we've been talking about the Toradex hardware, which has safety built into it through things like RDC and SMUMAN. And we've talked about QNX, which is, again, a pre-certified OS. So we'd want to ask the audience if when you're looking at a solution, are you considering QNX or just your OS to fulfill your safety needs? Are you looking at just the hardware to fulfill the safety need, or a mix of both? Okay, so it seems 20% only need QNX. 30% actually say I have other requirements, so it'd be interesting to know what those requirements are. Perfect, thank you guys. Okay, perfect. So in today's webinar, just to conclude and wrap things up, we've discussed structured versus unstructured environments and what it means to be moving from our designs in industry today to designs in industry in the future, right? Again, now we have structured environments where things are caged off, where there are curtains and defined areas where robots are going to be operating with very simple and sometimes ineffective safety mechanisms, such as just if the gate is open, robot arm should be disabled. If the emergency stop switch is pressed, then the robot arm should be disabled. You can get into situations where people may be in the cage and the door closes, and now the robot doesn't have this idea that, oh, door is open, or sorry, door is closed, emergency stop isn't pressed, and it begins operating, right? And now you have a human in harm's way because the robot doesn't have any advanced sensing to see that there's actually a human within the cage. So we're evolving again to unstructured environments. Assembly lines in the future, it's going to be in city streets, farms, warehouses, it's going to be in our everyday lives. And although ISO 10218 doesn't cover all of these different facets, there are ISO standards being written that will better deal with unstructured environments in other industries as well. Now, the second portion that we need to understand is we have to really balance safety and the availability. Technology is going to rapidly increase, and it's really difficult to come up with good and safe safety requirements and recommendations to accommodate all these technological advances. So robots are going to be able to perform a lot of given tasks, but that needs to be balanced by making sure that we're implementing them in a manner which keeps humans first and puts humans first in a unstructured and coexisting environment. Now, one of the best ways that a lot of this can happen and robots become more and more mainstay in industry is that there needs to be predictability in unstructured environments. And there's two parts to that, right? Humans need to be able to trust that robots are going to behave in a predictable way that they're aware of. And robots need to be programmed in such a manner that they can follow the rules that humanity has set. So in the future, when we have AMRs and we have things moving around in warehouses and your robot arms going everywhere, they need to be able to understand, okay, a human's walking this way, this fast, I might intersect it at this point and needs to be able to react, right? So for that, we really need hardware that's capable with good processing power. We need software that can harness that hardware and make sure that it's really utilizing everything. The software needs to, again, be real-time, hard real-time, where it's executing tasks exactly when they're needed and all the safety critical portions of the applications are handled well and reliably. So that wraps up the webinar and the talk. Thank you for your interest and thank you for listening, and we'll open it up for Q&A with Lucas, Winston, and myself.
Hello. Yes, thank you for the presentation, Arslan. Now we jump into the Q&A session, and I see already some questions here that I would relate to Arslan and Winston. So maybe one to start off is, why would I use QNX over a general purpose OS like Linux for safety in robotics?
So for me, this answer has two aspects to it, right? One is time to market, right? Linux is not, and again, it ties into the second point, which is QNX is a pre-certified OS, which Linux is not, right? So when you're looking at taking a product to market or an application to market by using QNX and our safety manuals and our guidance as a baseline, you're going to be able to develop products on top of the OS, which will be a lot easier to certify and a lot easier to prove the safety case for. We're really prevalent in a lot of auto and safety cases. QNX is a no-brainer because it is pre-certified and it makes that stuff easier. And going into the general embedded market and in industrial markets, medical markets, people are beginning to see the barriers getting lowered when you're using QNX as an OS over Linux. Now, the second part of it is Linux, again, is a microkernel, which gives you freedom from interference. It's going to be more robust at handling failures. It's going to be able to be way more predictable, and the execution is going to be reliable every time.
And just to add to that point, when Arslan said Linux, he actually meant QNX.
Sorry,
just to build on that, yeah, the architecture enhances the fault isolation and overall system stability. So while Linux is usually widely used, it's not, as Arslan alluded, not safety certified. And to make it safety certifiable takes a lot of customization, removing unnecessary code, extensive validation and testing. And then at that point in time, when you're doing all those adjustments and customization, you're essentially maintaining your own OS. So there is value added to a COTS solution like ours. And Arslan alluded, a lot of the OEMs in automotive use us, as well as in medical, surgical robotics, and as well as AMRs and whatnot as well.
Okay, maybe a follow-up to that. I have two very similar questions that I would bundle into one. How does the QNX OS make the creation of safety functions simpler? Or, put into other words, does your OS offer some kind of C, C++ wrapper for the creation of safety functions?
As I understand, not a wrapper, but the GCC compilers are qualified. And our safety guide and safety documents will give you guidance on how to develop safe applications. Just gonna go here.
I see other questions coming in as well. So is the concept of semi-structured environments also used relevant in the context of these norms? Some transition phase?
Yeah, so again, I think that question is more tailored towards, okay, if you have a warehouse or an industry that is currently existing as a structured environment, is there an expectation that it just becomes an unstructured environment at some point, right? And what we have to understand is the standards in ISO 10218 are being written to address the growing concern of these robots in unstructured environments, right? But again, these standards are newly published in February 2025, and the set of requirements before was not too full-featured. So there obviously will be a transitionary period where people may move from structured to unstructured environments, and that is going to have some phased approach, right? It would be completely unrealistic to expect that everything becomes unstructured immediately. Now, where does semi-structured fit into this? Simply, we don't have to account for it too much, right? Because the way I see a semi-structured environment is you might have a robot arm, you might have 3 robot arms in a factory, let's say, right? One of them is existing in a structured environment where it's caged off, and 2 new ones were added where it's unstructured and it's using advanced sensing to interact with its environment, right? So that, again, now is what I believe a semi-structured environment would be, but really you have a set of requirements that are for your structured environment, and then you have a set of requirements that are for your unstructured environment, right? So you can have a bit of both in your warehouse, in wherever you'd like, but from a safety requirements perspective, there's only the need to define the unstructured and the structured set of requirements.
And just to build on Ursulin's answer and response, when you're talking about structured versus unstructured environments, it's dependent on the customer and what their needs are. Structured environments are very expensive. But in the end, the functionality behind that is very simple, right? You open a gate, everything shuts down, everything's caged off from where humans operate and where robots operate. In a semi-unstructured environment, you might be able to have 3 gates, and the robot arm can hand off certain objects to an individual. So what the ISO 10218 standard is trying to do is trying to build standards within these different use cases so that if there is more collaborative applications being deployed, that there are safety parameters around it.
Okay, very good. Another one came in. How is the GCC compiler qualified? Are you qualifying it yourself? As new bugs are reported against the compiler, do you issue reports about how they impact the qualification? How do you guys handle it?
Yeah, so with our OS, we have a version of GCC that we select and we release. We have a cybersecurity team that is always monitoring safety vulnerabilities that are happening to actually all the products that we offer as part of our OS, and we are issuing patches to that and to address that.
Okay. I think this one you already touched on, but maybe it's good to do it anyways. Is ISO 10218 also applicable to non-industrial environments like city streets or retail stores?
Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned in the last slide there is a growing prevalence again of robots in a lot of different places like city streets, for example. Now, it takes a lot longer to have safety standards published for these things than it does for the technology to develop. That being said, there are different ISO standards which are trying to fill this need and gap for safety definition in other industries as well.
Yeah, so building on Ursulin's comment there, so 61508 is the de facto general standard for functional safety. ISO 10218 or 10218 is the standard for industrial robots. There are other ones that are currently under development, such as ISO 13482 for service robots. So even though 10218 has been updated, we're going to start to see a progression across the various different ISO standards to be updated to meet the addressing needs and changes in innovation with robotic technology.
Cool. There's a couple of hardware-related ones. Maybe I can get this one. So what is Aquila in the survey? Sorry, I might have missed it earlier. It's okay. I presented Toradex's portfolio at the beginning of the presentation, and Aquila is one of our SOM families that is mostly catered towards high-performance, high-reliability applications, mostly related to medical, industrial, automotive, and it's a very nice match with QNX. Mostly when talking about the Aquila IMX95. The IMX95 SoC BSP for QNX is under development and should be available in the near future. So Aquila is a Toradex family of systems on module.
Yeah.
Another one that's, yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, to add on to that, right, tying it back to the higher demand on robots, right? We're going to need more cores, more power, right? And one of the reasons why QNX is a good fit for these kind of hardware pieces is when you're looking at our QNX SDP 8, which is our software development platform 8, we have linear scalability as you increase cores, right? So you're not losing, you're able to harness the efficiency and performance of each core as you're scaling up, and you're not really seeing degradation after a certain point. So
yeah, and what's important here is that you can develop with a mixed criticality system, so you can load all your safety and non-safety applications on the same SOM module like the Aquila, right? And making sure that you're able to run all your software on just one platform.
Cool. Another one that's related to hardware, but maybe more for you guys. When is the QNX BSP for the IMX95 going to be released?
Right, so the IMX95 BSP we're currently working on is the Verdon. So that's this one down over here, and expectations are that we'll have a featured BSP ready for release in summer.
Perfect. Last one, also slightly related to hardware. How can I get started developing with QNX on the i.MX 8s?
Right, so there are a few different ways, right? The one that I would recommend openly to most people, hobbyists, tinkerers, and stuff like that, is QNX Everywhere. So QNX Everywhere is an initiative that we have that allows basically anybody, as long as they're agreeing to our non-commercial license, to download a version of our QNX SDP8. And with this version of SDP8, you'll have access to all of our BSPs for download. So at that point, really what you would do is you just get the hardware piece that you need, and then you'd grab the BSP, build your OS, and then you're good to go. Throw it on an SD card. We have a lot of user guides. We have a lot of tutorials and trainings that are free for everybody if they want to get started. So barrier to entry getting started with QNX is currently very low, and there are a lot of resources available to kickstart you guys and help you start tinkering with QNX and Toradex hardware.
Cool.
If you wanted to go the non-commercial, or sorry, the commercial route, then it would be best to get in touch with one of our regional sales managers or our FAEs, and they can figure out exactly what your needs as a company is and coach you and help you out through that entire process, getting you onboarded with QNX.
Okay, I left this last one for the end since I think it's a nice summary. How do I simplify my safety design with QNX?
Yeah, again, QNX is a pre-certified OS under many standards, and what that's going to do is really speed up your time to market. It's a highly reliable and robust OS, which is going to allow you to be sure that your software and your applications are acting as expected. And then finally, we have our freedom from interference with our microkernel design. So if any portion of your application goes down or the OS goes down, it is not completely crashing your system. You're going to be able to recover from that and then act immediately.
Yeah, and building on that, QNX has some built-in features like time partitioning, memory protection, basically tools that support deterministic behavior and help meet timing and fault timing requirements, or fault handling requirements, which is what you'll need to build a safe system. Most importantly, we also have a safety manual that comes with our OS for safety that will help guide you through the process in terms of how do you leverage the right OS, how do you integrate the right components, how do you build with the safe system and safety applications in mind, and then how do you leverage the hardware and software combined to make sure that whatever system you're building is done so in the right fashion.
Okay, that was the end of our questions, so I believe we can end here. Thanks a lot, Arslan. Thanks a lot, Winston. Thank you, everyone who also participated. And I will see you on the next one. So have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.